Welcome to SEEK Bytes, a podcast by software engineers for software engineers. Today's MixBytes episode has a special guest, Raf Sutioten. We discuss everything, an NPM package that stirred up some controversy. We also discuss TypeChat, a Microsoft package that lets your program be talked to. And finally, we discuss imposter syndrome and how to seek help if you've experienced it yourself. Welcome back to the podcast with myself, Seamus, and we have a new guest today, Raf. Introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, I'm Raf.
Raf, give us a little bit more than just that. What do you do here? What's your background?
I have quite a long story, but I'll give you a brief summary. So I'm a career changer, actually. So I've been a mechanical engineer for 7 years, and then I've decided that's not for me. And I joined the grad program. So I changed into software. Instead of building real things, I'll build software, things that you can't see. Quite enjoying it now. I've been at SEEK for 4 years. So
nice. I like it. I think that's the perfect introduction. The whole little package.
Yeah. If you want to unwrap, we'll do it.
We know a few people here that have gone from mechanical engineering into software engineering. I wonder what the incentive is to switch industries. Was it just you just weren't as interested, and it's engineering adjacent, so software, why not?
Yeah, so I feel that in high school I kind of wasn't exposed to any IT kind of things. There wasn't a lot of software subjects, and I was always into problem solving, and engineering kind of ticked my brain, but software wasn't an option. So not until I was kind of 7 years into mechanical engineering, I realized there's another kind of domain I can get into. So
nice.
Yeah, interesting. Well, very cool. So today on the podcast, it's a MixBytes episode, but we have some interesting topics. I think the first one I really want to talk about is the everything scenario on NPM. Have you guys heard about this one?
No.
No? Raf, I know you've heard a little bit about this.
Yeah, a bit. Everything the package, right? Not everything.
Everything the package. I mean, it kind of encompasses what it sounds like, though. So I'm going to give it a little bit of backstory and talk about what the actual incident was, how it came to be, and maybe a couple other incidents which were similar to that as well. The incident was, NPM, for anyone who doesn't know, is a package management system for JavaScript projects. And you can publish, anyone's free to publish whatever package they want. And so someone published a package called Everything, published by Patrick.js and a couple other people as well. It's kind of, it sounds like it had 3,000 dependencies leading into the package. It was just one package.json, which is where you describe all your packages and what it depends on. And it had over 3,000 sub-packages involved, causing you to, if you were to download it, it could cause a denial of service. But the real issue was that any package which relies on another package can now no longer be deleted. So all of these 3,000 plus packages can now no longer be removed from NPM. And that could be a problem if what you have is just not a real production ready thing. You just want to remove it. It can now no longer be removed. And on top of that, because of how some of the weird dependencies work, it actually depended on itself, so it couldn't even be removed either. And this caused a lot of uproar. It was meant to be just a little joke, a little prank, and not a prank. They didn't expect it to have these consequences.
Yep.
But yeah, it was up for a while, and they couldn't remove it, and they had to reach out to NPM to even get it removed themselves.
So it had how many dependencies? You said 3,000 dependencies?
3,000 plus.
Right,
yeah.
and it was dependent on itself.
And it depended on itself.
Right, okay, interesting. So it made this immovable object, this immovable package.
Would be good to talk about why that rule exists as well. Like, why can't you unpublish something?
Absolutely. Yep, I have that. But you go ahead, Raf, if you know the backstory.
So there was this package called LeftPad. Back in the days, I believe it's just trim some white spaces or something on the left. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was to add a character to the end of like a string.
Right. It's just a very simple package that does a very simple thing that you could do yourself. You don't have to rely on this package. But
it was 11 lines of code, this package was?
Yeah. But a lot of people rely on this package. And
This was the thing that started it, right? We're talking about the first package that created this rule or gave us reason for the rule.
Yeah, why you can't unpublish a package, because Yeah, well, I'm not sure exact the story, but maybe you can.
Yes. So this developer he was really into open source and he wanted to make things for the community because that's kind of how he learned as well. He was a bit of a self-taught developer and he published about 270 NPM packages. The one that started the issue though was a package called Kik that he had, K-I-K. And what happened was that another company called Kik, a US chat company sharing the same name, wanted to publish a package of their own. And so they reached out to this developer and they said, hey, you have a package named, same as our company. Can you please change your package name? And he essentially said, no, I'm using it for my own open source stuff. So they came back with lawyers being much more persuasive, saying, it's our brand and, we'll sue you if we have to.
Can you? That's interesting actually, because it's like an NPM, the name of an NPM package is not, it's not like a branding, it's not a logo, it's how, all right, continue.
Yeah, so he still didn't want to change it. He said, I'll change it if you give me $30,000. Kik, the company, were clearly not happy with that. So they reached out to NPM to try and get it sorted out. And NPM sided with the company. And that caused the developer, who was very into open source, he didn't, he wasn't expecting the company that he's, putting his own open source code on for free to side with this big company.
Yep. Like literally the only reason that NPM is a thing is because of all the packages that people build, right? Like it's
absolutely. They sided with him and he was like, all right, well, if you're going to take it down, then just take out all of my packages. I don't want to be on a platform that's supporting these big companies. And so all 270 plus of his packages were removed within the next day. One of those packages being LeftPad. I think was that what it's called? LeftPad, which not a lot of people knew about because it wasn't like a primary dependency, but because what was the package? I think React used it only because it was like hidden deep into their dependencies. And when it was gone, now suddenly hundreds of thousands of packages could no longer be installed and working. So NPM, to fix it, unpublished the package. The first time it's ever happened where they had to unpublish a package purely to fix all these issues.
This is LeftPad.
This is LeftPad, yeah. They had to.
So he said, take all my packages down, and then they brought it back to fix other people's dependencies. And then they made a rule you can't remove packages anymore.
So from that day, they were like, well, if your package is dependent on by other packages, you now can't delete it.
Otherwise, it becomes like a malicious vector, right? Like long game. You make like working on a package for 5 years, or a couple. Like actually, most packages have probably lived and died within 5 years. But you build a package, you grow up a community, and then you just rip it out of NPM, and all their systems crash.
It's a bit scary as well. Like how
imagine if Axios just disappeared.
That's right. There's some big name packages, and the thing is, I know NPM gets a lot of hate because of how people just don't like how unthought out it is, that you can just put whatever you want there. The fact that you can upload a package that has every single package and now you can't delete that package if it's depending on it. Like there's so many issues that can kind of come to that obviously they hadn't really thought about that. I think from what I hear, and I think perhaps some of the views that I've been reading recently have been very biased, but it's like it's been very much like just go with it. Just like let's get it to work, and let's just kind of have something easy to use, but perhaps doesn't have a whole lot of standards in place compared to perhaps some other package manager. I haven't used many other package managers. Do you have any thoughts on any others?
No. It is the industry standard, right? For a lot of large companies, they're using NPM. I haven't.
For JavaScript,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I know pip for Python and what's some apt for, I don't know, some of those things.
What did we use in Scala? Gradle.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't really needed to go deep to understand the advantages or disadvantages of any of them, to be honest. But I have heard the sentiment that, NPM being driven by such a large open source community, it tends to go fast rather than, in a well-structured, thought-out direction.
Always reminds me of that meme, that comic strip where you're building a castle and then there's little tiny block on the bottom that's dependent by, created by someone, open source, and it's, you rip that out, your castle's all broken.
Yeah.
That's right. And there's there's more scenarios. So I have a couple other examples of this. One on Faker.js. This happened, I can't remember the year actually. Anyway, Faker.js, what happened here was the package wasn't pulled, but it was, code was added to the package maliciously. So one day there was an update where if you were to run it, it would spit out just gibberish, essentially. It was Faker.js and color.js. And what it was actually a protest against open sourcing stuff. People are not paid to put these open source projects on. And so he was protesting against big companies just letting you, just like taking advantage of the free packages. So he essentially broke his own package and pushed it. And he said, if you want it fixed, you can fork it if you want. I'm not fixing it. So hundreds of packages were just broken. The output was liberty with a whole bunch of gibberish, non-ASCII characters. Now, it's just crazy that like you can break a package at any point. You literally just said, what if Axios or any big name packages just go? Well, the same thing. Packages don't even have to go. They can just be maliciously modified. And now no one can use it. Use that version. Sorry, you could still roll it back if you wanted to. Yeah. So since then, someone did clone it. There is now a different. If you were to install Faker.js now, that is a fork of the original package. So it's still maintained and it's still fine to use now. But that's another example. And the last one also was node-ipc. This one was used on Vue CLI. And the incident was that someone put it's called protestware. They had a package called Peace Not War, which if you were to install it and you were located in, I believe, Russia or another country, it would create a text file which had some text in it. I can't remember right now what it says. I have it here, but I have to find it.
A manifesto or something.
Yeah, it wasn't a big text file. It just, was an anti-war sort of thing. And because it was only an issue if you were in certain countries, and because all it did was create a text file, it was marked as a low risk vulnerability. Yeah, right. From SNCC,
which don't always get the most immediate attention.
That's right. Yeah, but because he maliciously put that code in himself, there was like malicious intent for it. Russia and Belarus were the two countries. Because he had like malicious intent, it became a bigger issue than it was. Someone could do that with malware and stuff, right? They could put malware in a package. I just think it's crazy how...
Like NPM aren't doing validation of, like it relies on external tools, and like we rely on external security tools, and we rely on the community reporting when there is a vulnerability and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all kind of trust each other using NPM, because someone certainly could make software that now has, it could wipe your hard disk or something like that as you install it. Like we all trust not only dependencies we have, but the hundreds of dependencies depending on just the dependencies we have, right?
And usually it's just a download count is a good indication of whether it's trusted or not. It's like, it's got millions of downloads. Can't be too bad, right?
Yeah. But two very similar scenarios where they actually did have code that could be exploited, and now hundreds of thousands of companies had to, one, fix it, and two, the open source developers who were working for free had to work on their weekends just to get this fixed. And they didn't get compensated for it. It's just a crazy world, the open source community that we use and we love, and I don't think programming would be where it is without it. But there's definitely a lot going on that we don't really even think about using all these packages for free.
It is pretty amazing when, like the Log4j vulnerability, for example, that was worldwide news. Millions of systems across the planet are using that dependency. It just shows that how fragile some of these systems can be. The way that it's just kind of built off of an open source thing. There isn't really like a governing body that's making sure that we're all safe. It's just kind of like if you end up in a situation where you're dealing with a vulnerability, you have to resolve it, and that's the ecosystem that we live in. When you're working on the largest code, like the largest code language that's available, doors open to more malicious stuff, I suppose.
Have you guys had much trouble with NPM and resolving dependencies and all that stuff?
Yeah, I guess that's like our job. like we update packages so that our software could keep running. I think that was a video someone made as well. I can't remember which one it was, but he's explaining himself like as a JavaScript developer. This is what I do every day. I just update my app so that my software could keep running.
Yeah.
Did you have to do the same thing with Gradle as well? Update dependencies constantly?
Yeah. I mean, as often as the dependencies were changing. That's what I mean when I say like moving from Scala to TypeScript. The dependency related stuff, it was just one tool solving the same problem, and didn't feel like a very different way. But yeah, you would get dependencies and stuff that you'd need to update. I think the biggest difference is like the way that those dependencies are managed, understanding that like nuance, like your lock file and stuff like that, not to modify it.
And do you guys, how do you guys go about with adding dependencies in terms of pinning and carroting and all that? For people who aren't aware, with NPM, you can write the package name and then have the version you want, or you can put a star to download any version, whatever the latest version is, or you can use a tilde or a caret sign to download either patches or feature branches as well. How do you guys typically go about managing those dependencies?
I think every team's a little bit different. I don't even know if we're consistent across the hire and monetization insights domain, because we're like from 3 different teams within the same domain, basically, like sister teams. I don't think all of our teams do it exactly the same way. I know that there's people in our team that are opinionated about how we should do it. I think if I remember correctly, we allow patch versions, but minors and majors. Do we pin everything all the time, just to whatever the current version is?
Yeah.
There you go. My previous team didn't. We allowed minors in my previous team.
Which does a downside too, because when there's a new update, you gotta do the
you have to manually
update
do it. Or if you're using a tool like Renovate or there's another one as well. It's pretty popular. I can't remember.
Renovate is the only one that I know.
Dependabot.
Dependabot is the other one. Yes. They can help raise PRs to do that automatically, but you still typically have to go in and check them and close them.
Yeah, some days I start the day with the easy task, so I would go renovate. Let's merge all these, and then I'm warmed up now, so let's do real dev work. Yeah,
but that is really just another part of the job, I guess, maintaining dependencies and while I think I used to be on the assumption that maybe using just like downloading patch versions wasn't too bad, but I sometimes I don't trust people pushing a change, which is actually a patch. Sometimes a patch can still break things.
That's the thing that I find really interesting is like one of the things that I've always gone in circles around is it's just left my mind, the patching convention, the naming. What's it called? The style of patching?
SemVer?
Yeah,
SemVer, yeah, semantic versioning. I always forget that term. Like, there's nothing stopping you from releasing a patch version that should be a major change. Like, there's nothing stopping a patch from being a breaking change. Yeah. It's just how you understand the convention. Like, it's a breaking change, it should be a major. Or like, it's got new features, it should be a major. New features and breaking changes. So even I'm thinking about it now. I'm like, when you do it's patching, no. Minor, yeah, you can have breaking changes in a minor.
I don't know. You wouldn't.
No, I don't think you do. No,
a breaking change would be a full version bump from 1 to 2, and a feature would be from like 1.2 to 1.3. A patch, if you're just fixing bugs.
There you go. Yeah, I got it back to front.
Yeah. Fixing just bugs or anything that doesn't add any.
The higher up it is, the riskier it is. The lower down it is, the less risky it is.
That's right. Yeah.
Basically, that's all I remember.
But you're certainly right. If you're just trusting the publisher to be going by that. And understanding those rules, which is why recently I've kind of been more into pinning, particularly when we do have bots that can help raise new PRs that can kind of handle that for you. You just have to make sure it works, and you just read the change logs if the package has a change log, which hopefully it does. It's not easy.
Yeah, it's like being a package developer is like, in a way, it's its own little skill set, right? Like, to be really good at it. I know that there's people in our team who do a lot of open source stuff, and it's evident just because the way that they think about these things clearly shows that they've spent time thinking about the impact the packages have on the consumers. For a lot of us who aren't like building packages, but who do work on packages, you're just writing code as if you're writing any other system. But, like the internals of my API aren't really exposed to consumers. But if I have an open source package, then how that code is written matters a lot more than how my API code is written.
Do you guys maintain have you guys maintained open source packages in the past or currently?
I've contributed. I've never maintained one. Yeah.
I know particularly with SEEK and our open source packages, like the workflow is very different. There's a lot more caution, a lot more care, publishing or even just updating something that's open source compared to something that's just within your team that you can quickly, fix up. Even though sometimes a change within a team or just internally can still affect other teams, but if something's going out to the public, that's a big risk when you have thousands of people downloading this package every day.
Look at Braid, right? Look at how much more care Braid gets in terms of its documentation and stuff like that, right? Like there's a whole playroom built for it so that you can, mess around and see how it works and everything. And I think Braid's a really good example of a highly, well-engineered, well-thought-out open source package.
Very much so. There you go. That was my topic on everything NPM. Don't download it. It doesn't even say in the README not to download it. So, and I wanted to mention this isn't the first time this has happened. There are also other packages that have done this in the past. No One Left Behind is another package, which was very similar. It had 33,000 sub-dependencies.
Whoa.
And there was also one called Hoarders, which apparently was effectively cancelled by the creator of NPM after a year due to its strain caused on the registry database, which is also had hundreds of, thousands of sub-packages.
Wow.
The reason everything caused such an issue was since we now can't remove the package, other people were having issues with it. So there we go.
That's really interesting.
So what's the resolution?
Okay. So the resolution now is that, so I'm just going to read this as I see it. However, we now see that while everything remains on the registry and everything registry scope packages, the scoped packages have been made private, potentially offering a solution. So hopefully, even though it still has all those dependencies, you won't be able to download it yourself. That's the resolution as of today.
It'll be interesting to see if NPM evolves over time to start to handle these kinds of things differently or put in place more security things. I don't imagine that it will. I think it's the nature of the open source industry is too volatile. Maybe volatile is not the right word. It's too fast paced. Yeah, it's evolving so quickly. Let's talk about LLMs. Everybody loves talking about LLMs. It's like the hot topic of almost of the decade, it feels like. Well, at least to me, I feel like LLMs are going to be one of those big things that we talk about for a long time.
One of the things you want to talk about for a long time.
I can't get away from them. Hey, I just feel like it's all around me all the time. But I think what's happened recently is Microsoft has released. I actually don't know how to call it. It's called Type Chat. I'm trying to see if they have a good definition, but in essence, it is a way to integrate existing applications with LLMs. So currently, the way that we interact with chatbots, with ChatGPT, and with the other LLMs like Bing Chat, Copilot, that kind of thing, is through natural language. So you'll type to it the same way that you would type chatting to a friend over Facebook or something, and it'll reply to you in natural language, like human-to-human style interaction. This is obviously not good for code, as we would all know, being engineers, that it's not exactly easy for code to process natural language. So this tool is about defining types that you can provide to an LLM so that its response will be strongly typed as a data object rather than a natural language response. So I'll read out what they've written out. It does. After defining your types, TypeChat takes care of the rest by constructing a prompt to the LLM using types, validating the LLM response conforms to the schema. If the validation fails, repair the non-conforming output through further language model interaction, and then summarize succinctly without the use of an LLM the instance and confirm that it aligns with user intent. Hopefully that's just all words to me in a way. But looking through the code, essentially the way that it works is you can define a set of actions that you want to take using natural language. You can either maybe in a CLI or some kind of request format. However you want to get the request into the LLM, you just write a set of natural language tasks you want to do. So let's say for like a calendar application as an example, if you have an existing calendar application, you could define a set of interactions that you want or a set of responses that you want the LLM to give you, like add a new appointment, add a new contact to my contact registry, just all the interactions that you want to do. You define the payload response back that you expect from the LLM, and then that's what you're feeding into your system.
Oh, I think I've seen this actually. Yeah, so you give it the output response, and it makes the code that outputs that.
It gives you so instead of saying like instead of giving you back a human-ish language response, like, hey, I've gone ahead and done this job for you on the 3rd of October, we're going to do this. It'll give you back an object that you've defined that has date, 3rd October, whatever.
Yes.
It has the username, XYZ, and it'll so you define a TypeScript type that is the shape you want back from your request. Mm-hmm. And then you say, like, I want to add to this calendar this thing. And it's inferring based on all the types that you've given it, what it should be using to respond with, basically. At least from my understanding of the examples. I'll pull one up now.
Yeah, I saw an example based on like baking or muffins or like cooking or something, where like you say that I can cook bread and I don't know, baked goods, cakes and etc. And then if you want to add to that, it can help like create an object that can help extend that, right?
Yeah. Man. So the way that the examples look is essentially your input is both the text of what it is that you want to do. So an example is I need to get my tires changed from 12 to 2 p.m. on Friday, March 15th. Mm-hmm. And you define the shape of the response that you want to get back. In the example, the output that's giving you back is just an object with some fields, action type, event, day, time range, start time, end time, description. But you define all of those fields, and it's inferring from the request where these elements should go, so that it can return to you something that your existing application can use. So you're able to, this is the part that I'm caught up on now is, so you've got an existing application, you want to interact with an LLM to do what? To get back data payloads. What's the alternative? What were you doing before?
Is this generating code or is it just generating types?
It's not generating types, it's generating responses that conform to TypeScript. So you get strongly typed responses. Instead of like a paragraph of text, you actually get a data payload back from the LLM.
So do you ask a question, and normally you get an object back, but it could be wrong. So you provide also the type. Is that right? And then it will try to conform to that type.
Yeah, like if you said, hey, I need you to return this shape to me. Like you can do that already, right? You can say to the LLM, like, I want you to give me back this data shape or something like that. But if the shape is slightly wrong, you've got to keep hitting the LLM over and over. You've got to do some refinement and stuff. TypeChat does that as part of the process. It refines it until it conforms to the actual type. So I guess in some ways it's also simplifying that interaction process. I haven't spent any time integrating with an LLM, like an existing application with an LLM. So I'm sort of digging through their examples at the moment to understand it better. What I would like to look into is how exactly we would integrate with these things without TypeChat.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think of where... How could you actually use this? And I actually now, having read the page on Microsoft GitHub, I actually remember this now. So how this could be used is that someone could use a chatbot to say, hey, can I get what's the example?
It's just clicked, yeah.
Could I get a blueberry muffin and a grande latte, right? Someone sends that, and then TypeChat would send your code the response of an object that represents that.
Yep.
So you'd have an item, name, quantity, name, size, whatever. It'll send a JSON response based on that prompt to your code.
Yeah. So you can essentially create a chat interface.
Yes.
That like a new, let's say it's a new page or a overlay or something in an existing web app or something like that or whatever. That chat, you can now interact with it, and the output from the chat will be input to your existing functions.
That's right.
That's probably the most like basic low-level way of, I think, explaining it. So in the calendar app, for example, right, instead of opening up Google Calendar or your favorite calendar app and then hitting the button to create a new appointment, setting the date and the time, doing that stuff, you just type in, hey, make an appointment for this date with this person. Send the invite, please. and I need you to include this in the message, this extra detail, and it will create and send the input payload to the function that creates that appointment in your existing non-natural language, non-AI driven, just basic old school app.
I think it's very cool. I mean, I think particularly ways to make forms easier is...
That is one of the big examples that they said is solving form complexity.
Because the example here, particularly with could I get a blueberry muffin and a grande latte? If you were to typically code that up, you'd have maybe a form with a drop down for what flavor of muffin you want and what type of latte you'd want, right? And they'd both be select fields maybe. This is saying instead of having a form, you just have a chatbot where someone could literally just type in their order.
I wonder if we could I haven't seen examples, but surely this is not that far away from, natural language processing from audio into text and then text into LLM and then LLM back to your application. So your very basic app today, tomorrow can have voice commands.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I'm seeing it.
So it's essentially like, don't know how many people will get this reference, but Unreal Engine recently, there was a new mod released for VR called UEVR, which basically takes all of Unreal Engine's games, which for people who don't know much about the games industry, that's like half of all games, basically. And this mod just makes your game VR compatible. There's a little bit of tuning and tweaking you need to do to move the camera around and stuff like that. But generally speaking, this is a tool that has unlocked all of the what we call pancake games, so flat 2D, flat screen games, and make them VR compatible. This is that, but for apps and LLMs.
Yeah,
it's
for
just an
voice.
interface that allows your some kind of generic interface that allows a non-AI app to interact with an LLM.
Mm-hmm. This would be like if we would implement it on Seek. You could literally just type, find me accounting jobs in Melbourne, and then we'd now get a whole list of all which I think is very cool.
Yeah, I'm thinking then, I'm type into it, find me all jobs in Melbourne, in Victoria and New South Wales for software engineering with a progressive culture. But obviously we don't have search parameters for progressive culture. So I'm wondering at what point where does it break down?
That's exactly what I was just thinking. You can type what you'd like, but I feel like people don't know what options they have if you're just giving them a blank slate. Someone might not know they can filter by salary or filter by progressive culture. If we did have something like that, they would only know what is clearly visible to them.
Yeah, that's why kind of your search filters and forms have all these different fields where it could be optional, and user can have a look at it and see, this filter is available. Whereas an open chat, it's an open world, so you don't know what you're going to search for or what you can search for because you don't know those options.
Kind of that visibility, right? That's part of the UX, right? Having fields that are clearly visible that people can see and hiding things that are less important.
Yeah, I would like to get an answer on what exactly happens in a scenario where it can't conform to what the request is. But in the examples, the schemas are all it's essentially defining all the different actions that your system can do. Add event, remove event, add participants, change time, change description, find events, that kind of stuff. Oh, it has an unknown action. So maybe if we dig into the docs, there'd be something in there about you must define your unknown action when it cannot find an action or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, what you just said, Seamus, before about learning and constantly researching things. That's what I found. More senior developers or software engineers, they tend to know the problems that you might come up very early. Whereas when I first started, I have no idea what's going. I don't know what the problem could be. I've just had to research it, and then you just run into them. But seniors, they tend to know, you're going to run into this problem. This is a very a gotcha that I ran into before because I've experienced it before. But maybe those kind of chat AI tools will kind of help you catch that early on. But segueing onto that, I want to talk about more career development kind of thing. So when I first started, I had to deal a lot with imposter syndrome. So I'm not sure if I guess this topic has been brought up a lot in the software engineering community. Do you guys still face that problem?
I feel like
Do you want to explain what imposter syndrome is?
Yeah. So I guess being an imposter, right? So you show up to work and then you were going to do this task. You pick up a card and you go, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know how to solve this problem. Why am I here? Who am I?
Should I be doing this career? Yeah.
Yeah. So is this the right path for me? Maybe I should be a potato farmer. What am I doing?
I've definitely been there, and I don't know. Like, I feel like it would definitely be harder in some work environments than others. I think SEEK probably does a pretty good job of trying to create a environment that treats failure as a positive thing, as a growth opportunity. And I think if you work in an environment like that, it's easier, but I don't think it goes away. I think it's a product of our industry, right? Because we work in a highly culturally relevant industry. Like mechanics aren't worrying about getting judged by random people on the internet because their work just isn't interacting with the population of the planet generally. So like because tech is such a big thing, there's so many big people within the industry, and even just saying the industry is such a broad concept. People like Elon Musk, you know what I mean? People that exist within the technology industry that just are on another level that the average person can't really compare themselves to. Like these are people that spend 100 hours a week just living and breathing technology, right? And when you're surrounded by that kind of thing all the time, you're gonna feel less capable or competent. But I feel like it's gotten easier for me personally over time, but it's still there. Definitely still there.
I feel like recently it started to click for me. So when we pair Seamus, we would talk about how to solve the problems, and then you realize how much you've learned over the past years, and you go, oh, a few years ago we'd have been stuck on this problem for ages, but it just proves that you've learned quite a lot. But you don't register that because there's so much new things to learn. You just keep thinking, oh, I'm a very junior person. I can't. I don't understand this problem, but it's just new. You just got to continuously learn, and that's the industry we're in.
There's
feel that as well, Will?
There's almost always someone who's above you, right? Like, until you're really close to the top, there's always someone who's above you, and they're usually sitting 2 or 3 desks away from you. I think that's probably one of the biggest contributors, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. I feel like when I was starting out, like my passion for wanting to code maybe not feel imposter syndrome. Like I knew I loved it and I knew I wanted to get better at it. And since I was self-taught, I wasn't really around people who would make me feel that way. I just had myself and I just wanted to learn as quickly as I could. But certainly once starting to work with other devs, it kind of made me realize how dumb I was sometimes at being a dev. And I think that's, when I would sometimes feel like, am I right for this? Like there's people way better at coding than me. Why am I a dev if I can't reach that level? But I think I've now kind of come to terms with understanding like there are people who are built for this, built for coding. Like they think it day and night. I'm not that person. I go to work, I enjoy it, I love my job, but then I can turn that off and I have interests outside of that. So I'm the dev I'm the best dev that I can be, and I think that kind of keeps me going. I know I always have somewhere to rise and get better at, even if I'm not a 10x developer or someone who can code like that. I think that helps me not feel imposter syndrome. But sometimes it creeps back when you're just feeling down or just, feeling overloaded, or many things can factor into it just kind of creeping back in.
I'm not a big fan of the 10x developer concept because I think it also like promotes that like I'm not that. I'm not the gun, I'm not the exceptional engineer. The term that I've butchered here before, barrel versus bullets. Yeah, it's not necessarily that you are doing 10 times the amount of development of another person, but some people are bullets. You can point them at something and then just shoot them at it and they'll get the job done. Other people are barrels, and they can orchestrate and organize all those other people to get what one of them couldn't get done in a much more shorter amount of time. Like that way of thinking about it rather than 10x developer, it's the barrel versus gun. It's not that there's one exceptional engineer, but one person who can unlock the exceptional qualities of everyone else around them. When I started thinking about it like that, I started to, like, my own imposter syndrome became a little bit easier to deal with, because when I see someone around me who just lives and breathes code, like say Sam, for example, who just does open source stuff all the time, you can tell that he's just right down in the weeds and the nuts and bolts of stuff. I can lean on him to get that information, and I don't feel, 5 years ago, 6 years ago when I joined SEEK, I might have hesitated to ask a question from just like, I want people to think that I know the answers, but now it's like, it's just so much easier for me to get the answer from someone who is in it all the time. And then I can go back to what I was doing and solve the things that I am exceptional at.
That's a very good point. I found that the team that we're in now, Seamus and I, we're in the same team. We're very collaborative and very open to making mistakes. So I feel that I have that room to just go out there and ask stupid questions, because maybe that question is, people have the same question as well and they don't know the answer. So you together, you collaborate and you learn from each other. So I really appreciate the team that we're in now at SEEK.
I think, kind of just what you were saying, like imposter syndrome can really come when you're feeling a little bit isolated. Like when you're working with a team that can keep your spirits up, and then you don't feel like you're an outcast or like you're doing less than everyone else. I feel like that's what you really need, because when you're an engineer, I think thinking that you're alone is, my tummy is rumbling like crazy. I think when you're an engineer, you're not alone. Like being an engineer, particularly at a big company, is about working in a team. People don't hire single engineers to just go off and do everything themselves. Some people, maybe smaller companies might, but particularly building a team is really where you get so much benefit out of devs. And I think you certainly need an environment to help foster not feeling imposter syndrome or being overloaded or any of those aspects.
Yeah, I really enjoy the pairing culture that we have. We can learn from each other. We can, give back the knowledge you've just learned, the mistakes that you've made in the past. It's great to grow together as a team.
Yeah, I think also when you're in a team like ours that does do a lot of pairing, you're more exposed to those little character flaws that other people are really critical of for themselves. Like, I forgot how to do a map, or I forgot how to do a reduce. Like, I'm such an idiot. Why am I even a developer? And you're like, I remember forgetting that a month or two ago. Like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe not the best example, but yeah, that you see other people going through the same struggles.
Yes, I think that's the key part there. It's seeing other people experience what you're feeling. It makes you not feel isolated in that feeling as well.
Yeah, I think because it's such a big topic, it definitely. The fact that we're talking about it now is evidence itself that just goes to show that people are passionate about this topic, because I think most of us do go through it. And I think definitely if you work in an environment like ours, people who don't go through it probably would have other character traits that might not be the most enjoyable to work with, if you know what I mean.
There's always, particularly if you're feeling that way, which I think everyone at some point probably does feel that way at some point. I think leaning on your team and your managers and just letting people know how you feel is one of the best ways to overcome that. Just thinking if anyone's listening and is feeling that way, certainly just reaching out to the support that you have around you is going to help.
100%. I think radical candor with your team leads is one of the best things that you can use to try.
Radical candor. What is that?
There's a whole book on it. There's a whole book called. I strongly suggest people look into radical candor. I love it. First time I heard about it, I was like, "What is this thing?" Because I've been doing it my whole life without even realizing. Because it's just the way that I am. It's just being really open and honest with people and vulnerable. And the main thing about radical candor is about being vulnerable. And I've found that anytime that I'm exposing my vulnerability to my team leads, they almost always respond with empathy and some significant career change comes out of it, or some, just almost overnight, my concerns are handled and dealt with. Because who's in a better position to help you understand how valuable you are than the person who's responsible for your work output, like your team lead?
Kind of leading on from that, I definitely sometimes I can feel imposter syndrome when I am overworked. Sometimes that's when it can come to me. And another topic I had was cognitive load in software development. We've touched on it a little bit in the past, but I wanted to dig a little bit deeper in kind of what it is and how maybe some specific things that can happen in tech, some specific examples. So cognitive load is essentially how much a developer needs to think in order to complete a task. And confusion is caused by high cognitive load. So there's kind of two different types. There's let me open this up. So there's two different types. There's intrinsic, which is caused by the difficulty of the task. It's something we can't reduce. If the task is complex, it's going to cause more cognitive load. The other side of it, though, is extraneous, which is caused by the way information is presented. And that's something we can affect. If we can explain something easier, it causes less cognitive load. So, yeah, good cognitive load is when the task itself is just complex, and bad cognitive load is when the complexity is based on the explanation.
Talking about 10x developers, that's a really good example of something that people don't. A lot of the time, people in engineering don't value this. But if you talk to anyone in product or outside of engineering, the people that stand out for them are the ones who can reduce extraneous cognitive load. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things, like when we're at uni, they said that like 80% of your job is being able to communicate technical things to non-technical people, mm-hmm. or even like slightly technical people. It's about conveying complexity in simple ways. Yep. And to me, when people talk about 10x and the barrel versus gun thing, I just wanted to go on this little tangent. I think that's one of the things that people don't value enough. So if you're one of those people who's really good at reducing extraneous cognitive load, you should leverage that as much as possible. Your team and definitely people around you will appreciate it.
And I hear that a lot, that people saying like we need to do it to particularly non-technical people, but we forget that like we also need to do it as technical people, because then it slows us down. It makes our job more confusing if we're not writing code in a way that isn't explained well. So this, by the way, this is a GitHub page that I found. It's called Cognitive Load. So if you're curious in reading more about this, I'll just go over some of the overarching topics that I found interesting. But it goes into deeper information. So there was like ways of reducing cognitive load. So I'll kind of go through these separately. The first one is inheritance. And too much inheritance can be bad, essentially preferring composition over inheritance. What that means is if you have a controller extending another controller, you now have to remember all of these controllers. By the way, our human brains can only remember like 4 different...
I was going to talk about this.
Yes.
Working memory versus... Yeah.
Yes, but I think that's different, because I've heard you can only remember like up to 7 things. But this is like... In this article, it's saying you can only remember 4 different random facts. 4 unrelated facts.
There's a really good book called Mind for Numbers that talks about this. It talks about working memory, and it talks about diffused thinking, which is when you stop thinking about a thing and then the answer pops back to you. That's actually a real thing. Like if you find yourself not able to remember something, stop thinking about it. Your brain will actually do a diffused thinking where it'll subconsciously find the answer for you. It's actually worse to try to think about it. Fun fact.
That's why we when we get stuck on a bug or something and you can't work it out, you just take a break, go for a walk, and then it comes to you.
It's real. It's a real thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it says here, the average person can hold roughly 4 unrelated facts in working memory. And this article kind of keeps pointing at that by having a brain emoji with a plus or 2 pluses, depending on how complicated the task is. So inheritance, for one thing, is, if you have a controller, or if you have something, a class that's extending multiple classes, say 4 plus classes, you've now got a lot of cognitive load now that someone has to go through and remember what all of these classes do, how they're extended, what's not extended, etc. So composition is a way to help deal with that by rather than extending things, split them out and kind of have, say it's a controller that like resizes an image. Rather than having like a PNG with a function called resize, you could have just like a resize function that takes an image and it can kind of handle itself. So that's kind of inheritance over composition over inheritance.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they're sort of taking what we know to be good practices in code and then just explaining why that helps with cognitive load, right? Yeah. It's funny, that is something that we're dealing with. We've got like type chaining problems where we've got a series of functions that happen in sequence, but they're not related to each other. But they have to happen in order because the first one the second function takes the input, which is the output from the last one, and essentially like we're building up this type product, price product, localized price product, rather than saying like get the product, get the prices, get the localizations, and then combine them at the end. So in isolation, these functions become very clear because it's give it an ID and you get back the price, or you give it a product type or something, you get back a price. Whereas now you have to understand, it's taking in a product. Is it using? How much of the product is it using? And then other issues like you have to chain the functions together. Even just trying to talk about it now, it's like so much more complicated than just saying like, I've got a series of functions that all independently can do their own thing, and then we just build a product at the end.
The second one though is talking about too many small methods, classes, modules, anything. Too many of something that's too small. This one something I found recently in a code base where it was all a very functional code base, but every little thing was split out. I remember having to try and find a value for a variable. It was a config file. It was a React config. It had a hook, but the actual config was in another file. So I went to that file. In there, it had an object with key values. All the values were environment variables. So I click on the definition of that. It takes me to another file where all those list of environment files were, and then I realized that was actually not an environment file. It was just values from another package. So I went through 4 files just to figure out that this value doesn't even live in this code base. And by that point, I couldn't even remember the value that I was looking for in the first place. But it was just so granular. Everything had been split up so much that you kind of get lost. And like just remembering what I was doing in the first place, it took a while.
It's why having like a good consistent architecture styling, like whether you do like MMVC or clean architecture or whatever, onion architecture or something, consistency in the file and directory structure helps with that cognitive load for sure. That's why one of the things that I'm the most vocal about is, doing things in a consistent approach from the architecture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a topic between deep modules and shallow modules. Deep modules are simple interfaces with complex functionality. Shallow modules are interface that is relatively complex to the small functionality it provides. Favoring kind of deeper modules that kind of perhaps maybe a little bit larger rather than splitting it out into 4 different functions, tiny functions that all kind of do the same thing. And I think this is I'm very much into splitting things up to make things simple, but I do notice sometimes that I'm extracting things too early, and so I think that's a key. Is like you want it to be easy to read for someone to find and not have to check out a million files just to figure out what this one piece of code does. Sometimes keeping everything in that one file just to keep help someone read things in order.
Yeah, you don't want to be jumping up and back to the start of the file and then back into the function and then to another file, and then you just want to read kind of line 1 to 10, for example, just in order to know what's going on. Because if you keep clicking around, you have no idea where you started.
Yeah, there's something in Clean Code by Uncle Bob about this actually, about like where you want to define your functions in the order that they appear. So like if you're reading through main, and main hits func A, func B, func C, then the next function below main should be func A, and then the next one below that should be func B. And then if B hits D, do you do C next or D next? It's the order that they appeared. ABC appeared at the top, so ABC. Like the idea is that you, as best you can, you want to try and structure it in a linear way where you're progressing through the code in one direction as much as possible. Sometimes that can go against the architecture, I think, before I say anything like that, I think there's a term that our head of engineering uses, that our staff engineers use, that I've adopted, that I find fundamental almost every time I'm trying to make decisions around where to put things and trying to help with that decision making on when to split something up, is reasons to change. If I just think to myself, what are the reasons for this thing to change? Does it share reasons with the current code in the same file? Then why am I separating it out? If the dependencies for change are the same, then they should be as close together as possible. They can be in different files, but in the same folder. That folder should be, you know what I mean? That mentality scales out completely, like to domain level choices about where endpoints should exist in this API or that API. It's like reasons to change.
That's right.
It helps a lot with cognitive load when you just distill the complexity down to that one statement. What's the reasons to change?
Yeah. On the topic of too many small things, I found this one interesting. Too many shallow microservices is something that can factor into cognitive load. In this example, he consulted a startup where a team of 3 developers introduced 17 microservices. They were 10 months behind schedule and appeared nowhere close to the public release. Every new requirement led to changes in 4+ microservices. Diagnostic difficulty in integration space skyrocketed. Both time to market and cognitive load were unacceptably high. I think particularly now with microservices being as popular as they are, too many microservices or too many small microservices can absolutely factor into cognitive load. Instead of working on one code base, you're now working on 4 different code bases and different editors, and getting something to work can be tough.
Yeah, I'm conflicted about microservices just because the boom into microservices sort of started right before I'd started working as a software developer, 7-8 years ago. Probably not an accurate timeline, but I sort of started full-time software development 6 years ago. So I didn't work for long in monolith environments, so I don't have a lot of experience. But I mean, just looking at some of the recent articles from Google, I think, I've said this before on the podcast. Actually, Google went back to a monolith with over 1 billion lines of code. They reduced a whole bunch of microservices down to a single repo. I think that it definitely feels like unnecessary complexity, which is obviously cognitive load, when you've got 10 microservices, but it's all owned by the same team. What's the justification and reason for making these things microservices? In our environment, we've got templates, and we've got all this stuff that helps you very quickly spin up a microservice. And I feel like in a way that has enabled us to just, I don't know where it should live in my existing code base. I'll just make a new code base. I'll make a new service, make a new Lambda.
And you end up with something like a phenomenon so-called a distributed monolith.
Yeah, actually. So we've got something called Fulfillment Center that we've been building. And I think that this is a good example of where microservices can be, it is essentially like a monolith distributed out into these microservices, but it makes a lot of sense because what we're doing is we're distributing the pieces of what would have been an API before, or would have been one big service, the pieces that each of our teams are responsible for. The fulfillment of the product belongs to my team, the higher products team. The fulfillment of, I don't know what the other teams are fulfilling exactly, but the Lambda that owns the logic for fulfillment of their product or their domain responsibility belongs to them. They can do deployments, they can manage the CI/CD, they can test how they want to test, they can write the code how they want to write the code. I think microservices make a ton of sense in that respect. Not just we can get better scalability, we can scale the exact piece of logic that needs to scale, but and this is not something I've seen done in other teams before, so I don't know how unique this is, but we've got 2 different examples, Fulfillment Center and billing, some budgets command. Anyway, 2 very similar things that you could imagine them as being a single API with a bunch of endpoints or a bunch of different behaviors, and then you just break it all out into Lambdas that the teams own instead of one team having to make change when your team wants that logic to change, you just change it. Not, like I was saying, not just for performance, but for domain responsibility and ownership. That's a really good reason to make something a microservice, I think. But it does add a lot of cognitive load. It's for someone who's on the outside and hasn't actually contributed to those components, those workers and stuff. It's complex just to rationalize and understand. Yeah,
definitely. I'm just going to go over these last couple that I found interesting. There's more here, but these last couple I thought were pretty simple. Complicated if statements is one, having nested ifs essentially. So if value over something and condition or other condition and other condition, it gets a lot. So just separating stuff like that out into easy to read variable names.
Call that saw blade.
Saw blade.
Yeah, because saws have jagged teeth.
Ah, I see.
They go in and then out, then in and then out, then in and out, like a series of triangles. Look at your code when you have nested ifs. They create these saw blades.
Yeah.
What about Pyramid of Doom? You kind of just
keeps
nesting
all
in.
the way out and then all the way back in.
Yeah, it's too wide to fit on your screen.
Yep.
Very much so. Yeah, I've been a big fan of early returns for a long time because I think it goes back into that example of reading code linearly. Is that the right word? Where you once the code is ended, I no longer have to think about anything afterwards. Right? I've returned here. I know where we are. And same for complicated ifs. Yeah, just splitting things out into easy to read variables. So rather than having just a condition splitting out to like is valid, is allowed, is secure, and then it just makes it a lot easier to read.
My takeaway from this, sorry, Raf, my takeaway from this is I think if people are experiencing cognitive load because of any of the things we just talked about, clean architecture, clean code, can't go wrong. It's going to help. Like if your team doesn't have strong architecture or code styling agreements in place, like just read a little bit into those two topics and you'll be better off.
You know what's worse than nested ifs? Nested ternaries.
Oh, yes. I agree with that as well.
I think they've officially just made it easier to do that as well in TypeScript, if I remember correctly. Or Prettier. Yeah, Prettier made it so that they're encouraging it now, right? So they've made it easier to read, the way that it nests and flattens them out so that you're looking at each condition independently, not like the saw blade thing.
Probably your last resort, though. I'd probably avoid that before you get there.
Same. I feel like if you're doing nested, there's definitely better ways to structure that code if you have to nest tertiary.
When I read the comments on that change, I realized we are not alone, but like we are, I don't even know if we're the majority in thinking that. There was a lot of passionate people who don't like boilerplate, who just want to write the shortest possible. Like they want terse code. They just want it to be as short as possible. Not necessarily legible, just they want to write the least amount of code as possible.
Yeah, I want to give the compiler less work.
Yeah.
Yeah.